Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 543 for June 13th. This is the pre-show, the magical time of this program where we share very boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally say outrageous things. And Bill and Brian are snickering like seventh grade boys because they're reading cuss words. What way is this a narrative or a video that you guys are watching? You want to share with the group here?
It's a video of an EF3 tornado that hits a Norfolk Southern train. The engine.
So who's cussing?
The engineer.
The engineer.
Oh, you mean so this video was actually taken from the train?
Yeah, he shot it with his phone. Looks like Ray Timmer did it.
So is this is this new or has this been around for a while?
Apparently it was published in May of 2013.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, so, Steve Holmes sent it over. He's our new foghorn preventer.
Cool.
So do I have to do anything to change my stuff there, James? I found an error in my Finder, by the way.
An error in your Finder?
Yeah, I've been posting the XML file to the wrong place.
Oh.
So my stuff hasn't been going to iTunes.
Second to look at it, but tomorrow morning early I'll do a screen grab of what feeder looks like. Oh, Nate says he's out, having to help wrangle kiddos unexpectedly tonight.
Yep.
Maybe it's just us. Aubrey's out and Kevin's out. Rick is here. Yeah, Rick, we finally have a man of intelligence that showed up.
Yep. Well,
Rick.
Reasonable intelligence, anyway.
Yeah, relatively speaking.
Everything's relative. You're going to love my pick there, Rick.
I'm having some, I don't know if it's bandwidth issues or what, but everybody keeps freezing up, so I'm only, if you're
going to like my pick tonight.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know that congressman that wants to privatize the Weather Service and make sure that all they do is collect data?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Cliff Mass wrote a blog post about it.
Oh yeah, I didn't get to read it, but I saw that he wrote it.
Yeah, the bottom line is clear. Local NWS forecast offices should be maintained, and attempts to privatize their functions should be rejected. That's the last line of his post.
That's all you need to know.
Does any of that have to do with the McKinsey report?
I don't remember McKinsey.
No.
This is
I think that's
Oklahoma Representative Jim Bridenstine.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it? Bridenstine?
Bridenstine. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the one where the Weather Service or NOAA has to certify that to Congress that no commercial capability or service, with or without reasonable modifications, can meet the requirements for which such program is being developed.
Yeah.
Why is it we manage to elect such jerks to Congress? I don't know how we do it.
This is when I'll be quiet.
Or do they just get stupid when they get there? I wasn't talking about MICs.
That's okay, we're used to it.
No, I'm talking about Congress.
Yeah.
Actually, I can trace my lineage to Mark Twain. He talked about Congress too. And apparently they haven't changed a whole heck of a lot since then.
Yep. Yeah, he had a few things to say on it.
Yeah. Like how completely dumb they were. And Mr. Spann?
Yes.
I hope that the FBI doesn't pay a visit to your son.
Oh, great. Which one?
JP. He posted a rather serious set of words about our commander-in-chief.
Oh, great.
Oh, boy. He was actually extremely funny on Jimmy Fallon the other night. I don't know if any of y'all saw that.
No, I didn't see that, but I heard he was.
He was really good.
You know what they say, even a blind hog roots up an acorn once in a while.
I think that's a bunch of metaphors you just mixed there, Brian.
Yeah, that's probably right. I don't know. I'm not real good on my metaphors. But I'm working on my pinafore, so. Well, James said outlandish stuff, so that's what we're doing. Outlandish stuff.
How are things in Las Vegas, Todd?
Excessive heat watch.
Yeah, it just went up today, as a matter of fact. For us, anyway. Phoenix had one already, so yeah. It's that time of year.
Get my EDD going here.
Mm-hmm.
All my hazards.
95 today. It was beautiful out there.
Not too many people say 95 is beautiful.
Well, when you got 15% humidity.
Yes. That's why around here we don't ever say that. I didn't look to see. What was the high today, James? 96.
96, I believe.
I'm
hotter than Birmingham, Phoenix today, huh?
Yeah, and I'm willing to bet you our humidity wasn't at 15%.
Yeah. That's a nice little thunderstorm. Did you get some thunder, Brian? I guess it missed you, didn't it?
I got thunder. That's all I got. I got about a ton load of thunder, but I didn't get any rain.
We got a quarter inch.
I didn't check to see if my temperature actually went down. I think it did. It felt a little nicer outside, but I'll
Nature's air conditioning.
Yeah, the temperature did. The temperature's dropped about 7-8 degrees. And that's just with a thunderstorm nearby. And it wasn't real close. Close enough to hear thunder. But
are we all here? Is the gang all here?
I think this is it.
Yeah, we can start on time.
Unbelievable. This is like the second week in a row we're going on time. I'm waiting on the television. They do this thing on that channel when they do these town hall meetings, and they had that up looked like from 6 until 7, but I think they're on weather. The ID is hitting, and we should be on here any second now. As soon as we get the TV side, we will start, and we are on the television, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, TV friends. All right, who's banging?
Oops, sorry.
I've had
Not me.
Gripes about the bangers from the audio guys. All right, so here we go. Get the recorders going here. All right, there's that one, and there's that one, and here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 400. Wait a minute.
Whoops.
Rewind about 2.5 years.
Gone back in time. This is number 543. 543. For June 13th, 2016. Getting awfully close to the beginning of summertime. The solstice is almost here, and most everybody is hot. Brian, how hot was it at your house today?
97 before a shower came within about, about 8 miles of my place. Cooled things off about 8 degrees, 7, 8 degrees. It was, but still humid.
I'm waiting on one of these Einsteins that's on this show to figure out how to forecast summer convection. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. People will ask, is it going to rain at my Little League game this evening at 6 o'clock? I've got a big outdoor function at 5:30. Is it going to rain? And the correct answer is I don't know. No human knows when or where it will rain on summer afternoons here. And anybody dares to suggest that they do, let's see you try it for a few days. It is one of the greatest mysteries of forecasting random air mass storms, summer convection in a hot air mass. Rick Smith probably knows how to do it, but he just won't share with his friends. Oh, Rick just hung up on us. He obviously knows, and he just doesn't want to tell us. I think Rick has bandwidth problems
here.
tonight.
Yeah, I may have to go audio only here if it doesn't get any better. But doing great here in Norman, enjoying. Summer is about to hit full force. I think we got high temps forecast up close to 100 into this week, and dew points in the 70s, and it'll feel like Alabama probably.
It's about time to break out those heat tips. And again, if you're a new listener to the show, we should give some kind of great rewards for the best stupid heat tips of the summer. If your guys on television locally come on with those big full-screen graphics and provide heat tips that are somewhat idiotic. We would love to be able to hear them. Like, number one, go into an air-conditioned room. That's one of my favorites. Like, boy, if I didn't watch this TV program, I sure wouldn't know to do that. Amazing what you learn on television these days. And, stay out of the sun. Well, do you think so? Now, this is what they do. I mean, it's just like a program to go through these stupid heat tips. And there's some information worth sharing. But this isn't it. I mean, and I guess the people on television think their audience, they're idiots. But when I try and tell these television people, they think you're idiots. So, I mean, this is just not working. So if you got some really good, stupid heat tips, try and record it on an MP3 file or something and get it to us, and we'll collect them and play those at the end of the summer. So Bill Murray is here, and let me just say we've got a lot of outages this evening. Nate Johnson is chasing children. Kevin Sully is ill. And Aubrey has work-related stress that she had to take care of some affairs this evening at work. So it's just us. So, Bill, how are you? And let's bring in our guest.
Oh, doing just fine. Enjoying the thunder outside right now, James. It's sounding like an artillery barrage outside my house here, outside Birmingham. But, James, we got a special guest tonight. He's a counselor in the National Weather Association, the program chair for the 2017 annual meeting coming up in Orange County in Southern California next year, after we get through Norfolk in September. But tonight's guest WeatherBrain is the meteorologist in charge for the National Weather Service in Las Vegas. Todd Laricos, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invite. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, it's always fun to talk to you, Todd. You got a lot of cool things going on. Talk about your career for a minute. Fill us in on your trajectory, how you got where you are now today.
And especially where you went to school.
That's right. I won't.
Oh, Knowles! Whoa! There we go. I held off till after the introduction.
Brian's off his meds.
Upcoming national champs, by the way, this year. So, yeah, I
you went to Clemson?
Yeah. No, I kind of came up the traditional, kind of non-traditional way. I think most people I've run into in this career field have loved weather right from since they were knee-high or since they could walk. And I was kind of a late bloomer in that arena. I joined the Air Force out of high school, and they had a list of jobs open, and weather was one of them. And I said, well, that looks like it'd be kind of cool. And I picked it and came in as a weather observer and later a weather forecaster. And it probably was, I don't know, maybe a couple months into my job, and I said, this is for me, base weather operations, pilots coming in, getting briefings, and doing all that sort of stuff. I just thought it was the best thing ever. And so I caught the bug rather late, but it kicked in anyway. And so I spent a number of years in the Air Force, got out, decided to pursue my degree at Florida State.
Yes. Florida State.
Hey, amen.
We are outnumbered, boys. We are outnumbered.
There we go.
They have a majority, no matter what happens from this point forward.
Possible run for the national championship this coming year?
It's coming.
Y'all sound pretty confident about this. What are you basing this on, gentlemen?
Hope.
the
Optimism.
I'm basing it on the money I just laid down at the Venetian on it.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Show title.
Right. Yep.
So you were in the Air Force and at Homestead when Andrew hit, is that right, Todd?
I was, yeah. I got there about 8 months before Andrew hit, so I was kind of a newbie, to the weather career field. I was an observer back then, but that was probably the most hectic 48 hours of my career was evacuating that base. Many of you may remember it was expected to be a little bit further north, up in Fort Lauderdale, St. Lucie area, and they kept amending the track further south. That was my first taste of hurricane operations. Not my last, of course, because I've had a couple stints in Tallahassee too. But yeah, it was just an amazing 48 hours. It was just nuts, completely crazy. So
we'll talk about that for a minute, because on Friday that storm really didn't look like it was going to amount to much, but it just kept on coming. And by Saturday morning, it really was becoming apparent that it was going to be a problem, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right, and a lot of decisions were being made. You can't just evacuate a base and families and everything else. I mean, I think they had 2 wings of aircraft there, F-16s, and they had to move all of that out relatively quick. And there were decisions being made to hold tight because there was a further north track, and they thought they could ride it out, more offshore flow, of course, because you're on the south side, that sort of thing. And then when that thing took a turn to the south, it was pandemonium. I mean, it was just, get the families out, and then, half of the military members also had to go with the aircraft. So they're being separated from their families. Their families were kind of left to fend for themselves, and it was just everybody just convoy to Orlando was essentially the message: just get out. And of course, Miami has its special set of problems, right? There's only one way out. So
Yep.
you can go across the the Everglades, but those routes were kind of blocked up too. Really, the main thoroughfare out was north, and it was just crazy. But one of the things that I think really was very interesting is there were 2 career fields on the base that came back after Hurricane Andrew. One of them was security police to secure the base because it was just essentially no fencing anywhere. It was just wide open at that point because it had all been blown down. And the other was weather. They needed observers in there because there was no instrumentation, of course, and they had to start the airlift in with C-5 aircraft. And they needed observations, and so we were the only 2 career fields told to come back. Everybody else never made it back to the base. They just told them to move on to other places. So very interesting. So, yeah.
So did the base completely close, Todd? I don't know the.
It did from active duty. Yeah, I believe it's a reserve base nowadays. So
Todd, talk about the military's weather function, and does it overlap with the civil and National Weather Service part of the process, or how does that work?
In some ways, yeah. I think it does more nowadays than it did in the past, to be honest with you. I think, when, and I'm sure everybody here has heard the term, DSS or impact-based decision support, which the Weather Service is kind of growing into the last 10 years or so. In some ways, we've always done decision support, but we've really been pushing our relationships with emergency managers, integrating into incident command, into the incident command system in our respective areas, and that is very military-like. In fact, it has its origins in the military, and so it's not all that unfamiliar to many of us that were in the military. How that kind of operates, and so from that perspective, nowadays it's much more similar than it used to be, where it was more product-driven and right after the modernization.
So all the various wings or squadrons or whatever are forecasting for all over the world, I guess. Do they use the same sort of watch, warning, advisory criteria when they're talking to people in the field, or is it a different sort of lingo they use?
It's lingo is the lingo is a lot different. It's a lot more specialized. The thresholds at which the military has for certain actions is completely different from the general public, and so from that standpoint, there's a lot of specialized forecasting going on. And that can run the gamut from anything from chemical dispersion to your basic forecast to highly detailed wind forecast for artillery, those types of things. You have to be really specialized, and jack of all trades sort of thing, right? I mean, you really can't have a PhD in every single thing that you forecast, but you have to have a general knowledge of the operation in order to be able to provide that support. So, very interesting. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. So.
Do the meteorologists have to have a good working knowledge of the exposures and the vulnerabilities of the weapon systems and the things that the commanders are facing, or is it just more, risk and probability, et cetera, et cetera?
A little bit of both. Yeah, we do have to have a little bit. To say that we're fully versed in all the chemical attribute. If it's more chemical related or something like that, there are schools that give us a basic foundation to be able to provide and have some context to the forecast. Again, that's pretty similar to what the Weather Service has been doing lately, which is kind of trying to integrate more and learn more about the operations of a particular customer, so that they can kind of put the forecast into context, so that it's easily understood instead of talking meteorology all the time, right? So, so from that basic perspective, we were trained, up to the level we needed to be. So, hope that made sense.
According to Brian, there will be no more of that as soon as this senator from Oklahoma gets through with what he's doing, right, Brian?
Right.
So Todd, at that point, you had not taken formal meteorology in college, right? Your training came through the military?
That's correct. Forecasting school in the military is about 6 months, and it's essentially about 2 years of college condensed down into 6 months. It's a full-time job. You're there 8 hours a day, and you're grilled. You're put in front briefings almost immediately. The briefing training starts. The communication, standing up in front of a group, and delivering a forecast. Starts almost immediately while they're teaching you how to forecast the weather. I thought it was very interesting to learn operational forecasting before going back and learning dynamics. I did it in reverse, so to speak. Most college curriculums are built on doing dynamics and thermodynamics first, and then you get into synoptic meteorology right later in your career field. I did it in complete opposite, I don't know what it was like to do it the other way around. It could have been better, who knows? But for me, I thought it was great to have that under my belt, going while I was digging my face in the Holton book, for the better part of a year and a half, 2 years. So
were you ever a forecaster in the military, or were you always an observer?
Yeah, I was a forecaster for about 4 years in the military.
So what was your craziest forecast you ever had to deal with that you can tell us about without having to kill us?
Let's see what I could tell you about. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this. Army does not have any weather. It doesn't have a weather career field in the Army. They pay the Air Force to station Air Force individuals on Army bases to provide weather. So I was attached to 10th Mountain Division in upstate New York, and we provided support to the light infantry up there. And we had a fairly decent-sized MCS move through over Nice Mills summer. I can't remember, June, July. And a fairly good-sized MCS had moved through, and I had put some low-level wind shear in the forecast for the couple of hours that was coming through. Even though it was implied by the thunderstorms, I threw it in anyway just to kind of give a heads up. Well, turns out we had a couple of C-17s, which were brand new at the time. These are cargo aircraft, 4-engine. That were loaded down with helicopters and Humvees and everything else in the belly. They were coming back from a exercise training, and they had to land on a very short runway. There was a very short runway up at Fort Drum, and so they were calling back and forth, and they were 3 hours away when they took off. Of course, they were down in Charleston, South Carolina, I believe. And I said, listen, this thing's going to be well, off to the east by the time you get up here. I don't think you'll have a problem. I had low-level wind shear out of the TAF at that point. So anyway, make a long story short, I want to draw it out. They come up 3 hours later, and there's a pack of, I think it was 4 or 5 of them. I'll just say 4. I can't remember how many. And C-17 was brand new at the time. And so I'd never seen one. I'd seen a lot of aircraft in the Air Force over a couple of years, but I'm like, I'm going to go out and watch this. So we had a perfect vantage point at the weather office. We just went right outside. You're on the tarmac. You're right there. So I'm watching these C-17s come around in the pattern, and they're turning fine. One of them's turning final, coming in, landed perfectly. It was a wet runway, so they were really on it, trying to stop. The second one came. Remember, they're really weighed down now. Second one came in, landed. Now here comes the third one, right? And I'm standing next to the weather observer who was working with me at the time, and I said, he looks high, because we had just watched 2 land on a glide slope, and I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, he looks way too high, and sure enough, in the last couple of seconds, he dropped like a brick and hit the runway so hard, I was convinced the thing was just going to flip over into a ball of flames. I don't know how he kept it level. He bounced the aircraft so hard that the wingtips went over. The wingtip had to be within 2 feet of hitting the ground if it was a foot. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
And I'm just sitting there stunned. I couldn't believe it. So he punches it, winds up going around. Second time he lands. Fourth one lands, no problem. So I didn't think anything of it. I had a good story. So in comes the investigation. Well, it turns out the aircraft inside the helicopters they had inside the aircraft had busted loose and had rattled around the inside of the aircraft and causing a ton of damage. And so, like anything, they do an investigation. And it turns out that this pilot pretty much popped the hatch, walked out, and said it was low-level wind shear and it wasn't in the forecast.
Oh, no.
So here it comes right out, and I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. So we had to go through a major investigation, and there was boards and standing tall before the man, trying to justify what we had done overnight. Long story short, we were on the safe end. We had done the right thing, but boy, did it cause a hassle, So, but this guy was worried about losing his pilot's license, and he was looking to finger somebody coming out of the aircraft there, and so it came right at me.
So a little Halsey's Typhoons scandal there in New York, huh?
Right.
So you referred to Todd to TAF. Talk about what that is, and I know there's a part of Weather Service and every other. I mean, the airline forecasters, military forecasters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so TAF stands for Terminal Aerodrome Forecast. So essentially, it's an encoded forecast of wind, ceiling, visibility, and with the ceilings, other cloud heights too. They don't necessarily have to be a ceiling or covering more than half of the sky. And usually they go out 24 hours. Some go out 30 hours. For bigger international airports that have long-haul flights from overseas, they'll produce a 30-hour, and essentially it's just landing weather or takeoff weather for aircraft coming into and out of the field. It's condensed for what the pilots actually need. Low-level wind shear, of course, would go in there too as well. When warned.
So I saw one of our prolific audience members sent out something today about the tower radars being upgraded at all the. What's going to be involved in that new build right there? Have you looked at that, Todd?
The tower radar? You're talking about the FAA radars?
DDWRs or whatever. Maybe Rick might know something too.
I haven't heard about those yet. So.
Wow, our friend in Louisiana is keeping us ahead of the news. We got breaking news there, James.
You get the news first on this show.
Well, while we got a break, we need to introduce Justin Gertz. Justin, it's so good to see you again.
Yes, good to be here again.
Yeah, I missed you last week. Are you? I can't believe you came back, as James says.
Well, I'm a glutton for punishment, so yeah.
Well, we're sure glad you're here. Anything cool going on in your world?
Not in particular. It's just summertime heat here for a couple of days. Relief coming this week. Not a whole lot going on in Cedar Rapids today.
Oh boy. Well, good. Well, the corn is growing. Is it high as an elephant's eye yet?
Not quite. Although we've thought that the whole knee high by the 4th of July needs to be updated quite a bit because it's beyond knee high already.
Okay, good. Well, we're glad you're with us. So jump in here anywhere that you can find a spot. So Todd, let's take you back to Florida State for a minute and your college days, and you played with a little bit of lightning data back then, huh?
Yeah, I built. I was very fortunate enough to get hooked up with a professor, Dr. Henry Fuhlberg, who's a more operationally oriented professor down there at FSU, and he hired me right away and worked on a joint project. I think it was a Comet project, if I'm not mistaken, back when there was money for these sorts of things. And so it was a joint project, and they were trying. Parks Camp, who's currently the SUE actually in Tallahassee right now, had done some work before me in the Fuhlberg lab on lightning patterns, cloud-to-ground lightning patterns under different flow regimes for sea breeze development. But he just did it in the Tallahassee area, and they wanted to expand it and do it for the rest of Florida. And so what we did was we took that data, parsed it by where the subtropical ridge was located, and the mean 700, surface 700 millibar flow, which kind of pushes the squall lines one way or the other, or sea breeze fronts, I should say, one way or the other. And so these interesting patterns of lightning emerged, and we had them by hour of the day, and you can actually watch the progression of a generalized sea breeze set up over Florida just by using lightning data. After a while, that data was used to actually produce probability of precipitation forecasts in our gridded forecasts in the Weather Service. But that was right at the start of the GFE era. That we were just getting GFE at that time. And so it was put into that system in order to be able to help with the forecasting of the pops throughout the course of the day. So it's a very interesting project. 45th Weather Squadron in Patrick Air Force Base picked up on it. They were very interested in it because of the operations that they do there with unmanned rockets. So it was a really good opportunity. I met a lot of really good people. Managed to work with the Weather Service, and that was kind of my in really to the Weather Service from that point.
So Todd, you're in Las Vegas now, and you have a different kind of weather than we're used to, obviously. So talk about all the various types, and I want to really talk about monsoons for a little while.
Sure.
Monsoon, I guess I should say.
I've been out here just under 4 years, and it's an interesting animal. It's a totally different set of issues that we have out here. And I was kind of a little bit worried, working at Tallahassee and the other locations I've worked at. It's been hectic. I like, I don't like severe weather when it hurts people, but the hectic pace of operations when weather's going on is something that I really thrive in. That's the type of environment I thrive in, and so I was worried when I came out here at first, but after working here for 4 years, the monsoons are a different beast. Nothing spins out here really. It's just up down, pulse convection, like James was talking about earlier. Very hard to predict, but and very impactful. And so there's enough to keep me busy out here for sure. So.
Yeah, it's a surprising variety of weather from winter to flooding and as you said, all the other severe thunderstorm things. Haboobs, and is that how you say it? Haboobs? How do you say that, James Spann?
Yeah.
A haboob?
Oh, you asking me? Am I the haboob expert?
Are we allowed to say that anymore? Did we rule out that word a few weeks ago? Is that what I heard?
And that's the show title, I think, here. No, what was that controversy about haboob? Rick, what's the story there?
Oh, there's been several, but I think the latest one was the Lubbock WFO posted something on their Facebook page, and they got a lot of people saying, we speak American here. Don't be using those them foreign words around here. This is
oh, brother.
I'm paraphrasing, but something like
that. So I guess you've had your share of haboobs there in Las Vegas, huh?
Yeah, they're definitely a problem. The Phoenix Weather Office and the Tucson Weather Office do a lot of research. We help out. We don't get them as often as Tucson and Phoenix does. There's a good source region down there where they get the thunderstorm outflows from the monsoon, and they'll kick up these really big dust storms. We'll get a few up here for sure in Vegas, and they're nasty when they come up. It's gritty, it's dirty, and they're a bear to forecast. They really are. What's interesting is.
So Todd, have y'all developed a haboob index yet?
No, we haven't. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do. There's a lot of research going into that, but I don't think we're going to call it that.
Maybe you can. When you retire one day, you can be the haboob expert on the Weather Channel.
There you go. Right.
All right. This is our new desert weather expert, Todd Laricos. So one of the biggest pet peeves I have, Todd, is when people say, it's coming a monsoon out there. That obviously is not a correct use of the meteorology there. So talk about what a monsoon is, and then describe some of the characteristics and how you know when it's in effect, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. Monsoon actually derives from an Arabic name that means season. And I think that, when we go out and we talk to people, and it's very hard even to educate people out here in the desert Southwest that deal with monsoons, their whole life in some cases. But in its simplest term, monsoon is just a season. It's a seasonal shift in the prevailing flow, that comes about because of heating in the summertime. And it's very difficult to combat that. It's a pet peeve of mine too, Bill, that somebody say, well, we're getting a monsoon, when a thunderstorm rolls in. Well, no, you're not. That's not what it is. It's a season. And so that's very hard. In some cases, to the general public, does it really matter? Probably not, but we try to use the right terminology out here. Most people don't realize either that we call it the North American monsoon out here. The Southwest monsoon is actually a previously named monsoon that happens over in India, on the far side of the globe. And so our monsoon here in the desert Southwest is termed the North American monsoon. It's not as strong as its cousins across on the other side of the globe. That has a lot to do with the Tibet Plateau and those areas, the terrain differences that they have over in India, and some of the heating differences that they have between land and water. So ours is certainly pronounced, but it's not quite as strong as the ones we see over on the far side of the globe. But they're still pretty impactful. Typically, what amazes me about the monsoon, and I really didn't know this until I moved out here and started really diving into the monsoon, being the MIC, the office here, is that it gets turned on and shut off almost like clockwork. It's like a light switch, really. And when it's on, it's just then it's gangbusters from that point on. I mean, any particular day can have pulse convection. I'm used to dealing with more like sea breezes in Florida. I grew up in Florida. The season for sea breezes just kind of comes about. Doesn't really just turn on. But here you can set your watch by it right at the last week of June, first week of July, give or take maybe a few unusual seasons. Boom, it kicks in and you're off and running. And so it's really an amazing phenomenon. And what it's been well studied, and we could talk a little bit about some of the characteristics of the North American monsoon. But just in general, it's quite an amazing phenomenon. And when those winds switch, what essentially it does, just for those in the audience, is if you bring up a map of the Southwest United States, what you see is the Gulf of California, which is between Baja and the mainland Mexico, and there's a large body of water there with extremely warm water, typically well over 80 degrees in the summer. Water temperature, and so what you get is a funneling effect of the winds. You get a lot of heat over the desert Southwest. Warm air rises, of course, other air has to come in to take its place, and it transports all of that moist air off the Gulf of California up to the Colorado River Valley. And with the type of heating we get in the Southwest, it doesn't take much moisture at the low levels to start the convective process, and of course you're off and running. So that's in a nutshell, I suppose.
So no contribution from the Gulf of Mexico then, huh?
Well, yes, we do, but typically it's more mid-level. What we're looking for from the Gulf of Mexico is the low-level moisture from the Gulf of Mexico won't make it over two mountain ranges into the Southwest. Very hard to do that. What we typically look for is waves or decaying tropical systems from the Gulf of Mexico or from the Atlantic will roll across and increase our mid-level moisture. Now you've got a real problem because your precipitable water, the amount of water in the atmosphere, is really going up. And now you've got, not only are you generating convection, but now you have prolific rain producers, right? Which is a real issue out here in the Southwest because of our soils, and we can talk about that a little bit. But those are amplification factors, really. You're going to get convection with the monsoon. What we're looking for is the things that kick it over into a big monsoon day, and those typically tend to be our bigger events. These are either decaying tropical systems from the Pacific, which will curve back around and hit us in the Southwest. They're not hurricanes or tropical storms by then, but they're coming back around and they're adding moisture and a lot of forcing. Or decaying systems from the Gulf of Mexico to increase our low-level moisture, and doing the same type of thing really from the other side. So lot to look at, days in advance to try and predict which is going to be a routine monsoon day, if there is such a thing, and one that's going to be highly impactful and start washing cars down washes and arroyos.
So are there parameters you look for, or just forcing mechanisms like you mentioned?
Yeah, forcing mechanisms in the mid levels is really what we're looking for. Any type of wave, it's tough to get a decent mid latitude wave coming through that time of year, but they happen. Once in a while, northern stream will dip down and we'll get tagged. A lot of times these decaying tropical systems have a mid level circulation that's still going, kind of come into the desert Southwest, and you have enough forcing there to set things off. So yeah, we're looking at that. As far as antecedent, what type of antecedent conditions are there over the desert Southwest? Precipitable water is a parameter that we look at quite a bit. Again, this is the water content in the column. That tends to be our, one of our better predictors, for where things are going to set up. Yeah, so we're constantly evaluating those things throughout the week, out to 7 days, and trying to get a handle on when the real busy days are going to be.
Does the monsoon season account for a large percentage of your rainfall for the year?
Yes. It accounts for roughly half. Half comes in the winter, January and December, and the other half kind of comes in the monsoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on a day like today here in Alabama, the precipitable water values are 1.8, 1.9 inches. What would be a big day for you guys, Todd?
Yeah, that's once we start getting above 1. We're talking about thunderstorm development. We're starting to get the pulse convection going, feeding on itself. Yeah, other mitigating factors, of course, and it's not the only factor. But when we start getting into 1.5, 1.8, now it's going to be an all hands on deck type of situation. We're bringing extra people in, and we're going to have to deal with that. So it really is a matter. It really is the number. You have to adjust to the numbers out here. I'm coming from I came here from Tallahassee, and it's kind of a shock, to deal with these numbers. It's just amazing. So,
yeah. 1 inch would be a great day, huh? In Tallahassee.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you some idea, 2.5 inches of precipitation in Las Vegas in 1 hour would be a 1,000-year flood event. So, I mean, that goes to show you how much precipitation, these amounts that we get are just, minute compared to everybody else, but they cause massive issues out here, largely, again, because of the soils.
Yeah, what is it that the soils do? They don't absorb the moisture?
Yeah, they don't absorb it. There's not a lot of vegetation. I mean, there's a lot of vegetation in the desert, but not enough. It's not, like back in the southeast. And what happens over time is that soil gets very compact and concrete. You can't go out to the desert and stick a shovel in. It's not, you need a jackhammer. And so when you get when you put 2 inches of water on that, now you have sloping terrain too, is the other issue, right? So the slope of the terrain out here is massive in some areas, and so that stuff is running off quick, and none of it is absorbing in. And so when that happens, and typically the worst situations are the ones where we get training of storms, which means that one storm or a series of storms will come over the same point. Now we're dumping more and more into those basins, and it's just aggregating as it goes downstream. That's when we really run into big problems.
Is there any kind of flood control in the city, or I've only landed in Las Vegas once, so don't know much about it. Do they have some sort of drainage canals to try to keep the damage down, or?
They do. They had a real bad series of floods that happened back in the 70s back in Las Vegas. In fact, one of them was the Caesars flood. There's some pictures of it online if you want to Google it. But Caesars was built right in a wash, believe it or not, a natural wash. And the valley slopes from west to east. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, there's some mountains on the west side. So everything slopes down towards Lake Mead. And Caesars was built right in the middle of a wash. And they had a big storm that came in. And pretty much put the parking lot underwater, pushed all the cars out and everything else like that. And so there was a series of these types of events back in the 70s that kind of got tired of it, and they said, okay, enough's enough. And it was a 0.5% sales tax, and it funds all of the flood control infrastructure in the city. And no matter where you go in the city, there are these gigantic concrete washes that essentially transport all the water that drops in the Las Vegas Valley from one end into Lake Mead. And it does it in a really quick fashion. So you can imagine the concrete structure. And I hope some of you get a chance to do this sometime. You stand beside these things, and the flow is just incredible. I mean, it is just moving at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour down there, and it's just raging. It's got trash cans in it, and anything you could possibly think of, it picked up from the streets, and it's just coming down there at a rocket's pace. It's really an impressive sight, but it's What it's done is it's protected a large portion of the Las Vegas Valley from devastating floods. We still have them. Not all of the Las Vegas Valley is flood controlled, but a large portion of it is, and so we still have problems. But for the most part, it's controlled. So I'm not sure "controlled" is the right word.
It's like flooding your yeah, exactly. So is flash flooding your biggest killer, Todd, in your county warning area?
Yeah, I think it's probably close to heat, to be honest with you. We do have our fair share of problems with heat. Las Vegas is a very big destination for outdoor concert venues and things like this. In fact, we have one coming up this week, Electric Daisy Carnival. For those that that doesn't register with, you Google that. It's a gigantic outdoor concert venue, and to the tune of about 500,000 people in an overnight concert venue. And so, these young kids are coming in. They're partying all day in Las Vegas in 100-degree heat. They're out at the concert venue all night, where the temperature, only drops into the 80s or mid 80s, and it's, you got problems. I think last year they had like 1,500 calls, at least related to heat in some way. So heat's a big one, but yeah, flash flood's the one that keeps me up at night. That's the one that's harder to see coming, harder to, to kind of pin down where it's actually going to occur. And so we do a lot on the preparedness end. To try and mitigate a lot of that, don't try to drive across, turn around, don't drown's a big campaign out here, of course, but there's always a select few that do that. So
somebody always thinks they can.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And the water usually proves
my beer.
wrong.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So. Todd, talk for a minute, because I didn't want this to get away. I wanted to ask you this question. You were talking about, parameters that signal the beginning of the monsoon season. Is it a dew point thing?
Yeah. A lot of times we'll watch the dew points come up. You can watch them march up, the Colorado River Valley. We tend to get there's a phenomenon out here called a push or a surge. And what happens is you'll get a surge of low-level moisture up the Colorado River Valley, and you can watch the dew points just rack it up as you move further north. It's actually amazing to watch. Some of them are quite deep. That's when you know you're in trouble. That's when you got a problem. Some of them are shallow and just enough to kick off some convection. But you can watch those dew points march up. Usually when those dew points are getting up into the 50s, 60s, we really got a problem. So, and I know that's low for everybody else. On the horn here, but those are some things that we know that we've got the low-level conditions in place to be able to fire off that convection. And of course, with pulse convection, it's all about boundaries. Where previous outposts from the day prior have set up, and that sort of thing. And so we're looking for those. Okay, so you got a surge of moisture coming up, but where are they really going to focus? What's the focusing mechanism on where they're going to start and propagate? That's a little bit harder to do. So.
I bet.
I think you're coming close to figuring out James's question. Where is it going to rain today?
I'm nowhere close to answering that
out. Yeah, we were watching the outflow boundaries here this afternoon, because we missed, a couple storms, and it was like, well, maybe that one will get us, and as you watched it propagate toward our house, it was like, voila, it just was a little, to our northwest, but we got, just enough rain to have to wet the grass pretty good, so we were happy about that. But it looks like pinballs, almost on a summer afternoon around here.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too about your precipitable water values, because I like to use precipitable water values as kind of a hint at maybe where there'll be a few more scattered storms. It doesn't say where they'll be, but maybe there'll be a little more or a little less. And over the weekend, I noticed our precipitable water values range from about 1.7 to 2.1.
Exactly. And our friend Sheldon Cusselson always writes us and says what the mid-level precipitable water is, or the low level, or the high level, and gives us a heads up. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I saw a NOVA a few weeks ago, and we just were in Bermuda about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Todd. And of course, water is critical there because they have no freshwater sources, really no lakes or places to get fresh water for it. So every home, every building has to have a rain collection system. And I was watching the snow a few weeks ago, and it was, a person or scientist in Tucson who was saying that enough rain falls on Tucson every year to fulfill all the city's needs if you could collect it all. But we probably spend a lot of our time trying to divert the water away because of flooding. So are there any efforts in Las Vegas to collect rain?
Mm-hmm. Lake Mead.
That's your whole collection system. Okay, that makes sense. How is Lake Mead these days? Is it?
It's about 40% capacity, I think, and we just hit a new all-time low out there. And so, that's Las Vegas's pretty much only supply of water. Well, that's not true. We actually have some wells up further north that we pipe water into, I believe. But the biggest source is Lake Mead. And so anything that falls in the Las Vegas Valley, or even around Las Vegas, flows into Lake Mead, and then in that way, I mean, I was half serious in throwing that out there. Lake Mead is our reservoir. I mean, that's we use it for power generation. We use it certainly for water too as well. It's always a big source of contention out here. How low will how big will the bathtub ring get? Around Lake Mead, and how low will we go? We're at our lowest now since they started filling it back in the 30s. It's important. I mean, certainly nobody wants to see Lake Mead get any lower, right? I mean, we all want to see more water coming down the Colorado River, but it's what most people fail to understand is that the Colorado River system is just that. It's a system. And so they treat it holistically. Reclamation is not focused on how much water is in any particular basin. What they're concerned with is the overall health of the system. And if you ever look at the lake levels of Lake Powell, which is further up on the Colorado River, and Lake Mojave, which is further south, they're always Lake Powell goes up and down a little bit, but Lake Mojave is always about 94%, 95%. And so Lake Mead is kind of that intermediate, where they're moving water down the system. And so, it's certainly important. I don't want to whitewash it either. It's a very important problem that we have, but it's not the end of the world. There can be changes made to the. I think what locks us into is that it's all treaty driven. So we have to allocate so much water to California, to Arizona, to Nevada, and even to Mexico. And so they have to hit those requirements every year. If we got into dire straits, those could be changed, I suppose. And so, you just have to kind of ride out these highs and lows. It does, I'm kind of the theory it's not going to take a lot, really, to fill it back up. A couple of good seasons, if we're in surplus, could do that, but or at least get it back to respectable levels. Most people don't realize, too, Las Vegas, we're kind of getting off topic here, but Las Vegas actually puts back about 40 to 50% of the water it draws through reclamation. So everything that goes down my drain, all the washing machines, all that stuff, all of that stuff, anything that doesn't go into landscaping, essentially, all goes back and is reclamated and put back into the system. And so most people don't realize that we're not just drawing off of it and then just dumping it in the desert somewhere, or it's evaporating. So a lot of it goes right back into the system.
That's good.
Yeah, that's really good. That's good conservation. That's got to be a scary situation out there. So I'm glad to hear you say those things.
Mm-hmm.
So changing gears for a second, Todd. I know you might can speak to some degree about the report on the National Weather Service and sort of the reorganization, if you want to call it that. Talk what you can. What can you tell us?
Sure. I think what I can tell you what just about everybody knows. A while back, last year I believe it was, we hired a very well-known consulting company, McKinsey & Associates. Have helped numerous federal agencies and even private industry come in and do a self-assessment. I think one of the more interesting things that they did is they took an organizational health index survey, surveying the entire staff of the NWS from the intern level all the way up, to Louis' level, and talked about a lot of what needs to be, what we really do well, and what needs to be fixed. And one of the things that came out of that organizational health index was that we really have something that I kind of resonate with is one of the most dedicated workforces you'll ever see in any type of federal or government service. We're really driven to really complete the mission, especially down at the office level, or the field office level, at every level really, but definitely where the rubber meets the road with morning operations and things like that. People are extremely dedicated. But what they said is that we just in this type of budget environment, in this type of environment, we're not going to have the capacity to increase our so-called decision support footprint at the local offices without making some changes in how we do business. And so that's kind of where we're at now, is kind of evaluating what do we want to test, what type of concepts do we want to test, what do we want to look at as far as pushing out and providing more folks to do decision support systems. Probably even though it was a pilot project, one of the more, in my mind, shining examples is my good friend Ken Graham down at Slidell, who had the test bed for a couple of years, where he had 3 individuals who were going out, embedding deep with emergency managers in EOCs, doing a lot of the legwork, exercising with them, and doing a lot of that legwork before a hurricane shows up, and so that you have built those relationships. WCMs have been doing this for years, so have other forecasters in the WFO. But I think there's a realization now that we have to provide more of that service, and how we do that is going to be tricky. And there are no easy answers. What I like about this process, and one of the things I think that frustrated me early on, is that there's never going to be, well, I shouldn't say never going to be, but there isn't going to be a premature plan on the desk that gets thrown down. It's 200 and some odd pages. You read an executive summary and says, this is what we're going to do. What McKinsey has kind of done is said, this needs to be a process, not a report that gets thrown down and then we do X, Y, and Z, kind of like the modernization. So the previous modernization. So what they're concentrating on is, let's test some of the concepts that are being thrown on the table and see, what happens, in these testing environments, if they're feasible, if they're not feasible. And so that's kind of where the stage where we're at now. I don't mean to be intentionally vague about it, but there's a lot of concepts that really just haven't been ironed out. Now, I know that, that I believe, we're committed to keeping the field offices in place. I think that, there's a strong indication from a lot of our partner bases, working closely with the emergency managers organizations, NWA, and a bunch of others, to make sure that we're talking to our partners during this whole process. So, but it's been frustrating. It's taken a while, but I'd like to think that we're doing it right. By taking the slower approach and saying, hey, we don't need to to go off on a tangent on something that's not going to be good for the agency, over the course of the next 10, 15 years. So
are there some indications, Todd, of when some of these findings and projects will begin to be tested?
Yeah, I think they're going to test some things coming up next year in 2017. That's the plan. A lot of that will be NDFD related, which is our gridded forecast database that's produced, daily for consumption. We're going to test some neat things that have been going on in that arena over the last couple of years. Central Region came up with an approach, to make standardized starting points for these gridded forecasts. So to kind of get rid of those discontinuities that we're seeing between offices, where the cloud cover goes from 100 to 10%, those types of things. So we're trying to get a handle on that and say, we probably should all start, from the same point, and then have this collaboration process where we're bringing WPC, Weather Prediction Center, in to the mix a little bit more than they have been in the past, and make sure that we're really enacting the one agency, one forecast type of philosophy, which Louis has been, very adamant in pushing. Is that we have to get away from this, 20 different forecasts out there, different versions of forecasts, Certainly we have more specialized forecasts that are geared towards certain customers, and we'll still have those. But as far as a routine day in and day out forecast, we want to be sure that we're collaborated up and down the agency from the top level all the way down. And I think we could be better at that, and I think that the testing in 17 is going to tackle just that problem.
So Todd, that's the first time I've ever really heard that. I'm sure Rick, maybe Brian, Justin might have heard this before, but what will that starting point come from? Will it come from a central location, or would it come from the blend of models? What would it be?
Yeah, they're testing that. There is a couple of test data sets out there. National Blended Model is one. And so that's a run essentially off the GFS. I believe, and I'm talking out of turn here, there's probably more people in the audience that know more about this than I do, because I haven't been keeping up with it as much, at least the details, of course. But it's largely GFS based. I believe it has some ensemble data in it, and also factors in the previous forecast too, so it doesn't make some wild changes. It's more gradual in its progression. So Central Region has a different version, I believe, called the CONS process. That's just its name from how it's derived, and their data set is very interesting too. So there's no decision yet, on what we're going to use. What we want to see is if that concept will even work, and if so, then how do we make it work? What are the requirements, and then set about trying to produce that so that it's usable to the forecaster down at our level, in the WFOs. So the hope is, I think, that with a starting point, we're jump-starting a lot of that process and saving a lot of time. Forecasters are still going to have to analyze weather down at the field office level. If you're going to consult with emergency managers, if you're going to be the weather expert with your core partners, you've got to have an understanding of the weather. You have to be able to produce a forecast on your own, evaluate the uncertainty in a forecast, evaluate the context in which the customer receives that information. And so there's a lot of rumors flying around that we just want like the offices to be a service outlet type of thing. Well, that's not really quite true. We want forecasters to be more dedicated to the core partner database and be able to provide them more contextualized forecasts. And to do that, they still have to stay in the forecasting game. The question is where's the focus, right? So.
Hey Todd, I think that's an important point. I know that there's some in the Weather Service that are, that think we're taking the science out of the forecasting, or that everything's decision support and social media, and we're not doing the science. And what you said is a great point, that we still have to do the science, no matter where the forecast starts from. I mean, we are still scientists, we're still meteorologists, and to be the local weather expert, we're still going to be doing all of that. So it's the application of the science more, I think. That's where some of the exciting things are coming up, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, and it's certainly our TV comrades here online will resonate with this. When you stand up and you deliver a forecast, or whether you're on TV or in front of an emergency manager, you had better know what you're talking about. And so you can't just be a verbal mouthpiece for a forecast that's produced somewhere else. You have to be able to get that across. And so what I tell forecasters is in my mind, this puts you back more in, this type of process could put you more back in the seat in doing the fun stuff in weather, which is analyzing the weather, trying to figure out how you're going to serve your customer and communicating that to them, instead of doing these repetitive tasks that could be done by a computer. So we need to leverage the technology so that the forecasters can do the higher level thinking.
So Todd, talk for a minute about the blended models. You might have mentioned, I've lost some sound there for a second, had to drop out and come back in, but talk about the blended models, how that's working, and what's been your opinion of it so far?
It's interesting. It's really an amazing system that they put together in a very short period of time. Although I'm sure the developers don't think it's a very short period of time. But that's the field. They've been working on it very hard, so I'm sure they wouldn't characterize it that way. But it's really come about quite quickly. What seems to be different is that it's not so much of a regional approach; it's a national approach. And so, out west, I resonate with this. A lot of research and new projects or new products and tools that are developed by the Weather Service, either come out of Norman or back further east, and we try to apply them out here where there's some hills. You wind up with them not doing so well, and so then there has to be resources put towards either fixing it or making it work out here. With the blended models, the team that's been put together, I believe Dave Myrick, who was a SU out here in Reno, is one of the leads on this back east, and he's been doing a fantastic job of making sure that all of the regions see these early prototypes of the blended models and are able to communicate some of the problems that they see with it. So I'll just give you one out here in Death Valley. We're having a terrible time because of the elevation. Elevation goes below sea level. Clearly, there's some sort of terrain mapping in the blended models, and it's just not capturing the humidity in Death Valley correctly. It's way too high. Well, we're working with them to track down that problem. Turns out that one of the automated sensors in Death Valley is not getting into the system, and therefore those types of corrections aren't occurring. So that's just one small thing, but they're going around the country and they're saying, okay, let's find out what the real problems are so that we can get a better starting point for our forecasters when they start. If it winds up being the National Blended Model, that is. But it's really, I think, the first time that I've seen where that type of development is going on, where there is a national, actually, a completely CONUS focus, and even an OCONUS, which is Alaska and Hawaii. They're even bringing them into the mix and asking what the problems are with the system. So that's good to see. Is that it's going to be a more holistic product, I hope.
So Todd, we're coming up here in less than 3 months to the NWA annual meeting in Norfolk. Of course, you're actively involved in the council. We'll have mid-year meeting coming up in Norman in just a week now, I guess, a little more than a week, 10 days. But talk about the program for next year, which you're one of the program chairs for. Yeah,
myself and Miles Muzio out of Bakersfield are the co-chairs for the program committee next year. We just selected a site in Orange County in Anaheim. It's a beautiful location. So it ought to be a lot of fun. I hope we can get a lot of folks that come out. I think we will, because you can kind of turn it into a dual vacation, I suppose, right, with Disney World, right, or Disneyland, I should say, right there. So it should be fun. Miles and I are really going to build on what Mike Vesio and Ken Carey have done this year, and now since you've stepped in, Bill, I think the organization and focus in this year's program in Norfolk has been outstanding. We're really weaving the theme in, which I think is very important to annual meetings, to have that theme and that backdrop to be able to contextualize everything we're seeing. I think we're getting a little bit better at poster sessions. We're getting a little bit better at concurrent sessions, which are new to the NWA. They're not all well liked. Nobody likes concurrent sessions because they're going to miss something, right? So we just, we're kind of, as Dave Freeman says, a victim of our own success. So, these annual meetings are getting very popular, and that's a good thing. And so I kind of see the concurrent sessions as a healthy thing. It means we're growing. And so, but those are, very difficult decisions that have to be made. What sessions need to be put concurrent so that there's not too much conflict and people aren't angry at us. So, but this year has been a really good open process. Not to get too far down into the weeds here, but the NWA put together a progression now with co-chairs or chairs for the program committee. So the committee is now made up of the program chairs from the previous year, the program chairs from the current year, and the program chairs from the next year. And so there's current, past, and future. All on the committee, and so what we're hoping for is some sort of built-in training mechanism so that there's some consistency in how the annual meetings are held, and so that's really good to see. We're documenting, all of the feedback we're getting, and then the next committee is building on that. And so I think that's a good thing too. I think it's going to bring some stability to the annual meetings every year. So.
Well, we're very excited about the WeatherFest in Norfolk. It'll be on September 10th, and so I want to challenge all my weather friends out there to get in touch with me and be involved in this. I think it's really going to be a huge event. We're very close to a couple of nice sponsorships that are going to allow us to basically make it a free day at the Nautica Science Center in Norfolk, just 2 blocks from the convention hotels. By the way, Overflow is being opened even as we speak, probably ready by tomorrow if it hasn't already been released today at the Sheraton, because the response to Norfolk has just been phenomenal. And I know the response next year in Orange County will be huge too. We'll have to do another WeatherFest.
So
for
sure.
Keep that in mind, Todd.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. And so in LA, I'm sure we're going to get plenty of response out of that. So
tsunamis.
Yeah.
But I've sort of monopolized you here tonight, Todd. It's been fun for me to talk to you. I enjoy getting to talk to you all the time. But I know Justin or Rick or Brian or James may have something else before we go to the recorded segments tonight. So gentlemen, fire away.
So Bill, a lot of people don't know this. You're a big shot with the National Weather Association. You're like what, the VP of the VP or what?
No, I'm very fortunate. I tell the story because the program chair with Todd is Miles Musio, who, of course, longtime broadcast chair and an amazing television meteorologist and just an amazing person. And so I get this call that says, hey, we've nominated you for vice president. You're going to be running against Miles Musio, so I'm like, oh, well, forget that, I might as well not even show up on that election. And, I get this call from Dave Freeman that says, hey, I got good news and bad news. And I'm like, give me the bad news first. And he's like, the bad news is you're not going to have very much time. The good news is you won the election. So anyway, I'm lucky to be the first 2-year vice president, and I guess they did that because of the annual meetings. And, because I really love the annual meeting. It's really important to me. James and I, of course, worked on the one here in Birmingham. Brian was the linchpin who held all the IT together, and Brian is getting actively involved in Norfolk. So I'm very excited about that. So this meeting is very important to the NWA. It's important to me as a meteorologist. It's important to our industry. So I'm looking forward to being out in California with you next year.
So the big question is, are you going to be the big president here after this term?
I don't know. There's no. There's no. The president-elect is the next president. Of course, Dave Freeman is the president now, but Gail Hartsfield, who is what weather office, Todd?
Oh, you're gonna put me on the spot. I don't know.
Raleigh. She's Raleigh.
Still Raleigh,
right? Yeah, I knew it was
Raleigh.
Yeah.
And so Gail is the president next year. There'll be this sort of the passing of the baton. Of course, it's pretty interesting that symbolically they're the last 2 session chairs in Norfolk. I thought that was pretty fun. I'm excited today. Cantori agreed to be a session chair on Tuesday for winter weather.
There you go. Yeah,
so I'm excited about that because Niziel couldn't do it. So anyway,
one more time, Bill, explain the situation where you moved the date from October back to September. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, the federal budget, of course, is always a problem around the 1st of October, and we found ourselves repeatedly behind the 8 ball. In Birmingham, there were some rumblings, but we made it through without any threat to our attendance, and of course, we had great attendance here for the annual meeting in 11. But the following year in Madison, the carpet basically got pulled out, from underneath, Jordan Girth at the last minute, and then it got worse in Charleston, and so it's this constant threat of not having the weather service, which is a huge part of the NWA. So it was a very contentious, very difficult, well, not contentious necessarily, but a very difficult process of deciding when to have it, because there are very few times of the year that it makes sense to have this event, and October is, actually one of the perfect times. And so, the very difficult decision was made to move this event on the East Coast because it's close to Washington, into September. So we actually are, in effect, sort of having 2 in 1 year, but we'll be in September from now on, and this should, hopefully eliminate some of that threat every year that we don't have our weather service friends at the meeting.
All right, put it in the red book. There's going to be a Category 5 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico the week of the thing.
Well, yeah, or even
absolutely.
worse, one that comes into the Mid-Atlantic. But anyone anywhere in the country will be terrible. But September 10th, which is the day of the WeatherFest and the day before the actual meeting starts, is of course the peak day in North Atlantic hurricane history. So great news there. But we're just keeping our fingers crossed, and we bought lots of insurance.
Okay, and again, for a lot of people listen to this show that maybe are just getting into college and they've never been involved in these meetings. Just quickly, Bill and maybe Todd, you can jump in too. What is the difference between going to an AMS meeting, and we all of us here have done this, but I just want to hear you two guys say it since you're heavily involved in NWA. What's the difference between going to an AMS annual meeting and the NWA annual meeting?
Well, I'll start and then I'll let Todd jump in. But the NWA is the largest organization of operational meteorologists, so it has more of an operational approach to it. It's more intimate. As Todd referred to, we have concurrent sessions. Again this year for I think only the second time. I think this is only the second time we've done it. But you used to could go to an NWA meeting and start on Sunday and end on Thursday. And, you didn't miss anything. If you went to all the sessions, you saw everything there was. And it's still pretty much that. We've balanced the concurrent sessions against each other so that, the interest levels are going to be divergent in those different concurrent sessions. And so if you come, it is the best week in weather. Between, 120 oral presentations and probably, I think, somewhere on the order of 250 poster presentations, you will learn more about meteorology than you could possibly imagine in a week, plus get tremendous networking opportunities. So if you're a student especially, there's a special student session on Sunday, and then stay as long as you can because you're going to rub elbows with, some of the best Weather Service, private, broadcast, academic meteorologists in the country. And invariably, there's like a mentoring session on Sunday that we're all part of. Where these kids are just like sponges. Now, James, they show up with business cards, and they're all very, very serious about what they're doing because all those things that you do outside the classroom are so important to you, in formulating where your career opportunities are going to be. Todd, what can you add to that?
Yeah, I'll take it in a little bit different direction. I think the TV Mets party a lot better than everybody else. How was that? No, I'm just kidding. So it's true though. But yeah, I think all of what Bill said is absolutely true. I think what I like, each has their merits. I've been to plenty of AMS conferences, and I've gotten a lot of, for students out there. I wouldn't favor one over the other. I think they need to do both, but I think they're quite different in their focus and in their attendance. To be quite honest with you, I think you get a little bit more of an intimate setting with different disciplines within the field of meteorology that I think are beneficial. So I was a benefit. I benefited greatly by, and I think my first NWA was Biloxi way back when, mid-90s. And it was fantastic. And you're sitting there. It's more intimate. I mean, people like Doswell were standing up and speaking, and all of the big players in operational meteorology are there. If you have any type of event, and that's not to say that the academic world is just as involved in NWA, but it all tends to have that operational focus, which I think is the real benefit, of NWA. So again, if I'm a student out there, I'm not favoring one over the other. I think if you can get to both, you'll find that both are equally, will be equally useful to you in your career. So
yeah,
and
to me, I was going to say the NWA to me just seems like a family reunion kind of thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because I'm an operational grunt, but the people you see at those NWA conferences, the meetings are just good friends. We have great laughs. We have a great time together. It's just like a family reunion. And the AMS is marvelous too. And I agree that they're apples and oranges. Mm-hmm. AMS is a lot bigger, and it can be mind-boggling trying to determine which sessions you're going to attend, but they both serve a great purpose, and I think young people should go to both just to see the difference.
Yeah,
I'll tell you. Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
No, I was just going to say, I think, I think that's right, and I would just, for the students that are listening, to the broadcast, one of the things that I love talking to students. I do it every chance I get. But one piece of advice I tell them, no matter what conference you go to, butt your way into the conversations. One of the saddest things I think I see a lot is students coming to these conferences and just staying, in their cliques. And of course, we do it too, right? We have our colleagues and our friends that we talk to all the time, and we have these side conversations in the hallway. These conferences are a chance to mix it up. I have to find myself breaking some conversations to go over and talk to some people I don't know, particularly students. And I encourage students to introduce themselves and not be shy about talking to people that you think you can't talk to in these conferences. I was there at one time. It's difficult to do, but students today seem to be a lot better at doing that sort of thing. They will come up to you, like Bill said. A lot of them have business cards, which is fantastic. So it's good to see, and I think NWA has that more intimate feel for them to be able to do it.
Yeah, and there are very few jerks at these things. Most of these conferences, I think students are intimidated, and they see these older people that have been in this for a long time. But I honestly don't really see that many people that would just not speak to you and go out of their way to help a student or somebody that's starting. So I agree totally. So engage with us old geezers. We are glad to help. We're not good for much, but we know people. But we got to take a very quick break here. We're going to do Professor Peters and Tony Rice in the Astronomy Report. We'll come back with the Weather Roundup. Aubrey is out, so next week we'll do a double email segment. We've got picks of the week and much more coming up as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
Last week, our guest WeatherBrains Steve Piltz introduced the WeatherBrains audience to something called the wet bulb global temperature. While I hate to show my ignorance, I really did not know much about this topic, so it became a natural for a WeatherBrains 101 segment. The wet bulb globe temperature, often shortened to WBGT, is a type of apparent temperature used to estimate the effect of temperature, humidity, wind speed, and visible and infrared radiation, typically sunlight, on humans. This differs from the better-known heat index, which only takes into consideration temperature and humidity and is calculated for shady areas. If you work or exercise in direct sunlight, WBGT is a good element to monitor. Industrial hygienists, athletes, military agencies, OSHA, and many nations use the WBGT as a guide to managing workload in direct sunlight. The formula for WBGT includes the variables of wet bulb temperature, the dry bulb temperature, and an element called globe thermometer temperature. For indoor use or in situations where solar radiation is negligible, the formula can be reduced to just wet bulb and dry bulb terms. The use of WBGT as an environmental monitoring measure during exercise in the heat was invented in the early 1950s in response to the number of heat casualties occurring in the United States Armed Services during the 1940s and 1950s. After implementing WBGT policies, there was a drastic reduction in heat illnesses during basic training. The globe temperature is the variable that is hardest to find since it is not readily available from standard surface observations. It can be measured directly with a variety of instruments available from companies like Kestrel, X-Tech, Reed, General, and others. There is also a table available which produces a wet bulb globe temperature, but that is an estimate based on temperature and relative humidity. This method is naturally less accurate than a direct reading since it assumes full sunshine and light wind. The resulting number provides a guideline for managing outdoor activities. The Georgia High School Athletics Association has established guidelines to be used that list specific values for rest breaks, length of practice sessions, and the equipment which players can wear. This is just another example of how we humans try to work and play safely with the conditions produced by our environment. If you have a question about the weather, you can drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
On July 4th, after nearly 5 years en route, the Juno spacecraft will arrive at Jupiter. Juno will study the composition, gravity field, magnetic field, and magnetosphere of our largest neighbor. We'll be searching for clues about its formation, which will ultimately tell us a lot about the formation of our solar system itself. Juno is only the second spacecraft to orbit Jupiter, following the Galileo probe in the late 1990s. This mission's pretty special to me because I was there at the 2011 launch, got to talk with the science team as well as representatives from the United Launch Alliance, who supplied Juno's ride, an Atlas V rocket. Juno visited Earth again in 2013 for a gravity assist, passing about 350 miles above South Africa. This put it on course for this year's Jovian arrival. In addition to a radiometer, magnetometer, plasma and particle sensors, and spectrographs, Juno is equipped with JunoCam, a visible light camera. Like the other instruments aboard, JunoCam is destined to fail, though. The planet's radiation and magnetic fields are so intense they literally fry instruments. We're hoping for some pretty spectacular data and JunoCam images before the science orbits are over. Emily Lakdawala of the Planetary Society gives a great breakdown of what to expect and when from JunoCam. Check my Twitter for a link to her blog and another link to a paper which describes in great detail how the spacecraft's rotation will help capture more complete views of the planet, despite the camera's only 58-degree field of view. The orbit also, quote, enables study of equatorial clouds and winds up close with a spatial scale of 3 kilometers per pixel at perigove. Perigove is your word for the night. It's the point in the orbit of a satellite of Jupiter nearest the planet's center. The opposite is apogee. JunoCam will be supporting other instruments during those first few science orbits, and a few images may come out mid to late August, but beginning November 3rd, it's all about outreach imaging. The public will have the opportunity to vote on imaging targets. Polls open each Friday and close the following Wednesday. Commands are sent up to the spacecraft. Between 5 to 20 images, depending on compression and the detail of each image, will be coming down. I'm guessing that great red spot, the oval-shaped storm, will top those lists. Today that spot's about half the size of Earth. At one point, though, that storm was estimated to be about 3 Earths wide. Elsewhere in the sky, on Saturday, June 18th, Saturn and the Moon will be just 3 degrees apart. A decent pair of binoculars reveals Saturn's rings, and with Saturn's opposition just recently passing, they might appear even brighter than the body of the planet itself. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink, by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
We're doing the show on Monday, June 13th. And by the way, Justin, I got to apologize to you. I should have had you on the show right when we started. I was late with the invitation. I apologize. So I, sir, am letting you go first on the weather roundup. What's happening up there?
Oh, boy. Well, we had a couple of just garden variety storms up in our northern viewing area earlier on. Plenty of lightning with those. But overall, I suppose the big story was and the sneaky little backdoor cold front that came in on Sunday. We were thinking it was going to be a third day with 90s. Some of our area actually stayed in the lower 70s that day because of that backdoor cold front that came in. Actually ended up being a decent day. However, I got to give Watson his little debut here. He still had to take a little rest.
Your show is going to the dogs.
He's our little thermometer because he's shedding like crazy now because it has gotten warmer out. Looking for a chance of a few stronger severe storms, maybe some wind producers here tomorrow. But it's just kind of the typical June pattern settling in here, kind of on the edge of that ring of fire starting to set up once again.
All right. So let's see here. Todd, I was looking at some of the guidance, I think, in about a week or so. It looks like a nasty heat bubble setting up in the southwest, huh?
Sure does. Looks like Phoenix is actually going to make a run at 120. Yeah, so that's... we'll see if we get there, but yeah, that's well above normal for us. I mean, June's a very hot month out here, but when it gets that far above normal, it's yeah, it's.
I saw one run where I think the heights at 500 millibars were approaching 6,000 meters out there. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow,
it's been a hell of a
nasty.
So Todd, where do y'all go to get cool? I noticed on the NDFD, like Mount Charleston is like 64, while y'all are going to be 97 tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, we benefit from having a lot of terrain. So you get up into Charleston, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet. You know, Charleston itself's about 10, but you can't get all the way up there. But yeah, you can get up there. A pool in the backyard goes a long way here.
Now, tomorrow, 45 for the high, huh? I'll take that.
Well, here too, when you jump out of the pool, you're an icicle, right? So you get a lesson in evaporative cooling.
All right, Rick Smith, is the tornado season finally over for Oklahoma?
Are you kidding? I'm not going to say that. Tornado season ends on December 31st before it begins on January 1st. But I think we see summer on the horizon, and we have had some kind of quite honestly unexpected, just super heavy rainfall just down to the southwest of Oklahoma City over the past 3 days. Parts of southwest Oklahoma had over close to 12 inches of rain down there. Lots of flooding problems, and not usually what we experience in June, but I think we are shifting into more of a summer-like pattern. So yeah, I think the bulk of our severe weather is gone, but it's never gone.
Yep.
Tornado warning in the Panhandle tonight in Texas.
That's exactly right. Yep.
And where we are down here in the deep south, Brian Peters, it was 97, you say, at your place today?
Yeah, 97, and dropped off nicely to about 85 with a shower that just came by. I didn't get any drops out of it, just a close one.
Yeah, it was 96 at the Birmingham Shuttlesworth International Airport. That's the hottest so far this year. But there is evidence of dry continental air slipping in here this weekend, so that'll be nice if that happens. That is always a big if this time of the year.
A gift from Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and the tropics are quiet, which is a good thing here. So again, Aubrey is out, and by the way, I'm actually thankful tonight. Typically, it is 7 minutes before the top of the hour. I would be freaking out, changing
basketball.
clothes,
that's right.
Getting ready to go in the studio here, but we actually have the NBA basketball game.
What's the score, James? I haven't been watching.
Cleveland 74, Golden State 71.
Good finish. Let's wrap this thing up so we can watch the end of the game.
I have a funny feeling this might be one of these overtime. I might be sitting up here until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Who knows?
Charles comes in at 4, so.
Yeah, exactly. When he's here, I'll let him deal with it. Picks of the week. This is where we go around and everybody shares something weather-related. This can be a website, hardware, software, instruments, anything vaguely related to weather. And this time of the year, I like that site, coolwex.com, where they have a page called Extreme and Weird Weather of the World. And you go in there and you can pick almost any parameter, and it gives you the stations that are reporting these extremes, which is pretty cool in the summertime. You can see some nasty heat and at the same time see some of the spots that are unusually cool. So the links will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. So, Justin, what is your pick of the week, sir?
It is the Midwest Regional Climate Center's Climate page. Now, they have a lot of really interesting things there. They're on this date in history. So previously it was, if you want to look up the previous weather for a given climate site on June 13th, for example, it was right there. But there have been, for example, some holidays that you might think, okay, well, how does history compare? And it's really tedious to go through and mark, the third Monday of every single November or whatever the case may be. They added a new feature called this Holiday in History. So if you want to find the given weather for a climate site every Thanksgiving, which changes date every year, it's all there. So check that out. They have all sorts of cool things to explore there, but that was a new feature they added just a couple of weeks ago.
Cool. All right, Brian Peters, what is your pick of the week?
My pick is Cliff Mass's weather blog, and he is entitled his blog, Do We Need Local NWS Offices If We Have Weather Apps, AccuWeather, and the Weather Channel? And I think you might be appreciative of his conclusion. And in the true tradition of Mark Twain, I just have to say that Congress hasn't changed much since Mark Twain was around. It's still crazy and weird.
Somebody recommended we get Cliff back on the show, Bill. I think, again, Aubrey's going to go. We've had a pile of great email guest suggestions this week, and Bill is working on those. But I'd love to have Cliff back on the show. He's a very interesting writer, has some very interesting thoughts. And as I recall, he's got some big pipes, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. He's got like one of these, our friend Morgan out in Seattle.
Yeah, I was going to say they must grow them up there or something. I didn't realize that Tony Rice had Morgan introducing him. That's the first time I ever realized that.
No, yeah, that's Morgan doing the intro. So
yeah, Morgan's going to be one of the session chairs in Norfolk. I'm excited about that.
Cool. All right, Rick Smith, what you got for us this week?
Well, this is a topic we discuss a lot here, the social side of communicating weather information. There's a group of people that have gotten together and...
You had to do it,
Rick. Yeah.
That's it. I'm sorry. I said the magic word. But this is a group of people, lots of alumni from the show, Dr. Jasko, Dr. Myers, Mark Fox, Melissa Huffman. Lots of people have gotten together and they do these blog posts and they have a Twitter feed, and it's just really, really good stuff, really insightful stuff about communicating. And I did an interview with them today about a lightning piece that they're working on for maybe next week. So lots of cool stuff. So it's the Weather Social website, and from there you can get to their Twitter, and really good stuff.
Awesome. Good deal. All right. So let's see, Todd, I'm afraid the floor now belongs to you. So hopefully you've been able to think something up here in a few minutes.
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking there's lots of good stuff to pick from, to be sure. One of the more interesting reads, I think, and I'll have to get you the link for the page after the show, but the MPAS model, MPAS, is being worked on at UCAR. Very interesting computer model. Could be a predecessor to the GFS. And I don't know if you happen to see, I think it was a couple of weeks ago when the squall line came through the southeast U.S. Excuse me. This model absolutely nailed the squall line at 108 hours. And I think it was a little bit off, maybe 6 or 8 hours off, but at those time ranges was just incredible. You know, of course, it doesn't necessarily dictate future results, but the model is a very interesting setup. It's not a normal grid, and for those weather junkies that like to read up on models, it's a very good page. If you just Google MPAS and UCAR, I'm sure you'll come to it, but I can send the link in too as well. So kind of the future of modeling for weather geeks. It's a good read.
Awesome. All right, Bill Murray, what's your pick of the week?
Yeah, my pick of the week is one that you'll have to watch with the volume down, because it will definitely violate our PG rating here on WeatherBrains.
Wow.
But it's a Norfolk Southern engineer who recorded a video of a tornado in April 2011 that actually hit the train. And so you will definitely want to turn the sound down, because it is quite colorful and salty, I would have to say. But that's my pick of the week. Dr. James Fleming is our guest next week. James Hawker, Andrea Melvin from OK First is a nice present from Rick Smith on the 27th. We'll talk a little more about the annual meeting on Tuesday, July the 5th, after Independence Day. Kevin Close will join us on the 11th of July. Trevor Boucher will be on the 18th. And we'll be talking about the Virginia Tech Tornado Cube on the 25th. We've got guests booked all the way out through August. We're working on September now, James.
Awesome. By the way, for all you iOS fans, look what I've got here. iOS 10, for those that are watching on an iPad here. And most people could care less, but I always find it interesting. Today was the day of WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference, and I'll be playing with this in coming days. Almost bricked this thing when I tried to put it on there, because you have to give them the ID, the digital ID of the device, and I forgot. But anyway, that for those that might be interested, there are new versions of, let's see, Brian, iOS, tvOS, macOS, and what else?
Everything.
WatchOS.
WatchOS,
that
yes.
came in.
Yeah.
WatchOS. In fact, the watch stuff actually looked pretty cool. They got a feature where you can just click this bottom button, and it will call 911 and call all your friends that you're dying or something if you get into a medical problem. You know. So when my head finally blows up, I'm going to press the panic button on the watch, and it's all over. So
just tweet it.
All right. All right, guys, we've got to put a ribbon on this one. We typically do this show every Monday night at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. And hello.
There we go. We've definitely
barking up the wrong tree. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. Of course, all of our social media accounts are up on the website as well. And if you listen by iTunes or watch there, we love those iTunes comments as well. Good, bad, whatever. We love them. So thanks a lot for giving us 90 minutes on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew. I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless. Love the dog
Todd.
bark. It was awesome.
Thanks, Todd. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks. I had a lot of
fun. See you next weekend in Norman.
Yeah, I won't be there. Actually, I'll be.
No.
Yeah, I'll be out in Wyoming. So.
Come say
Oh,
hi,
good
Bill.
for you.